Sport Fishing on the Fly is brought to you by Maui Jim Sunglasses. First Tellurium Corp., the future of mining. And Hardy Rods and Reels. Today on the bench I want to tie up the Vampire BMW Micro Jig Leech. Now it's a small little fly, but sometimes in the spring and in the fall the fish really key on these small flies. So again, this is a size 14. I even tied on a size 16 jig hook. Make sure they're small and have these materials ready before you tie the fly. For the hook, we'll use a size 14 Hannock H400BL. We'll tie with some 8/0 black thread. We'll use a 7/64 inch slotted tungsten Chartreuse bead as the bead, some black Marabou for the tail, some red crystal flash for the tail highlight, some black Marabou for the body, and some fine red wire for the rib. So to start the fly off, I put the bead on the hook, and I'm just going to take some thread and get a little bit of a base layer tied on there, get the thread tied in. Now we're going to take a Marabou feather, a black one, and I only want about 3 or 4 of these fibers. I want to keep the tail and the body quite thin. So if you look at it, there's about 4 or 5. Just going to pull off, keep them even, and then pull it all the way back until you get a tail. So the tail we're going to have about as long, just slightly longer than the hook bend or hook shank. And then we'll tie it in. Keep all that material out of the way. And just wrap it back to form a tail. You can tell the tail is going to be quite small. We want a nice thin tail on this fly. Go back around the tail and then over top. And again, the tail looks small, but that's quite big, quite a lot for a small fly like this. Next, we're going to take one of our red crystal flash fibers, just one. Wrap it up on top of your thread. And then pull it down as you tie it back. Just pull it down on each side of the tail. Just so you have 2 tail highlights. You don't want too much flash, just a little bit of flash. And make them about the length of the tail. Just cut them to that length. Then you got two little tail highlights. Now we've got all this excess material that we're going to use for the body. What I like to do is just wrap my thread forward, then bring this material back, and that is going to be the body material after we get the rib tied in. So bring that right back to your tail. So that's kind of back at the tail. So now take some fine red wire. What I like to do is go into this body material a little bit. Just put it in there. Just go through it. And that way it'll kind of hide that red wire as you tie it in. Once you wrap it, and then just wrap all that right back to the tail. Come forward with your thread and leave it right behind the bead. Now we've got this material that we didn't waste. So we're just going to take a little bit of that Marabou. I'm going to take a few wraps. Wrap it, I take about 6-7 wraps of that material. Keep it pretty tight. And once you got it wrapped, just put on some pliers and then wrap it forward. So what I'm doing is I'm wrapping it, probably there's 1 wrap, there's 2, there's 3, probably 4 wraps up to the top. That's quite nice, and then I'm going to tie off. And you can see you get the nice fibers built up. Just cut off your excess as close to the bead as possible, and then you have a nice head built there, right by the fly. And you want to make sure you have fibers all the way up. Now what we're going to do is take that fine red wire and just slowly wrap it forward. And as you wrap it forward, just try not to trap too many of those Marabou fibers. And if you do, you can pull them out with some Velcro clips after. And tie that right up to the head. Take a few wraps at the head and never cut your wire. Just whirl them, 360 type whirling, and that'll break right off your wire seamlessly. Now to finish it off, we've got all this material pulled back. We're just going to build up a little bit of a black collar there. with a whip finisher. And this will help move this Marabou back slightly so it looks good in the water. And I'd like to double whip finish. A lot of people finish with a head cement. I don't worry about it because my flies don't last that long. And I'm just going to cut off the thread there. So there it is, the finished Vampire BMW Micro Jig Leech. Again, as I mentioned in the intro, it's a great pattern to have in the spring and the fall, especially in the spring as the chironomids are starting to hatch. It does imitate small leeches and even small chironomids. So make sure you have them in your fly box because they are deadly.